Hello and welcome to Fox 29 News Now on this Monday morning, November the 26th. Well, an 8-year-old boy and 2 teens are in the hospital after they were shot in West Philadelphia. A gunman opened fire and a stray bullet hit the boy inside his home. Steve Keeley was live in West Philly with more.
Sometimes a top political issue comes right to the front door of a political leader. State Representative Joanna McClinton now has her West Philly office in the same powder blue and beige courtyard complex with bullet holes right in the place next door and then down inside the courtyard where an 8-year-old boy took a bullet to his right cheek last night before 8 o'clock when he was inside his family's home here when the bullets came through the walls, intended for 15 and 6-year-olds also shot here in the courtyard outside.
Obviously, the ultimate tragedy of it all is that, a poor little 8-year-old sitting in his home and is struck by gunfire in the face. If there's any consolation at all, is that all 3 of them survived. But, you think about how traumatic that must be to be sitting in your home, not only for his parent, but for him. And the safety of your home, and now you got to deal with that because you got at least one or more idiots deciding to fire recklessly in the courtyard, and then ultimately striking 3 people, 2 of whom they obviously were shooting at intentionally. I came when I got the call. I went out there and I wanted to see what it looked like. I wanted to see, what this kind of chaos looks like for people who have to deal with it, and that's the reason that you go to these scenes. And so it doesn't get any better for you. When you see these things, the only thing that probably makes it worse is people who think they have some magical formula for solving this chaos. There's no one magic formula. There's no panacea. You have to use intelligence-led policing. You have to use the cooperation of the public. You have to use a whole host of things at your disposal to try to tamp down this madness.
Gun violence now has a new growing specific category: teen gun violence. And sometimes that violence out on the street can become the dangerous uninvited guest into a house and hit someone still years away from being a teenager himself. In West Philadelphia, Steve Keeley, Fox 29 News. Back to you.
Well, as you know, it is Cyber Monday, and you can bet Amazon is going to be pretty busy today. Let's check in with Lauren Johnson. She was live in Robbinsville, New Jersey, inside Amazon's Fulfillment Center. Lauren? Well, we will come back to that. Looks like we had some issue with the video there. Well, Black Friday and Cyber Monday are increasingly merging. The physical rush of Black Friday and the armchair browsing of Cyber Monday are increasingly blending into one big holiday shopping event as more customers buy items online and pick them up at brick-and-mortar stores. Adobe Analytics reported Saturday that more customers are going to stores to get items they buy online. That trend contributed to $6.22 billion spent online by the end of Friday, up nearly 24% from last year. It's a sign retailers are merging online businesses with their physical stores, even as fewer people travel to those stores on Black Friday. ShopperTrack, which tracks Black Friday foot traffic, says there was a 1.7% decline from the same period last year. Adobe says more than $2 billion in sales were done from smartphones alone. With more on Black Friday shopping trends, Good Day spoke with Fox Business analyst Tracy Carrasco.
Good morning.
So how many of us shopped on Black Friday? Is Black Friday dead?
Well, according to Adobe Analytics, $6.2 billion was spent on Black Friday. Now, $2 billion of that was made by people using their smartphone to make a purchase.
Okay.
That number represents about 1/3 of the sales done on Black Friday. That number also up from last year when $1.4 billion was spent using our smartphones. That was a record number. So we are seeing more people, of course, shopping online, but shopping on their smartphones. This as retail traffic was down this year. According to Retail Next, their estimates were 5 to 9% decline in foot traffic in these stores. So because of that, we could see better sales today on Cyber Monday. Maybe the retailers trying to make up for lost sales. So they're pushing people now to the websites to scoop up those good deals.
Yeah, we're still buying. We're just not going in, like wasting all the time to stand in line at the cashier and everything, because they had all the cyber deal weeks. I bought so many things at places where I just don't want to go in there and drive to the parking lot.
Can we just make a promise to all of ourselves, the three of us at least, that we stop doing this story? That people aren't going to the stores anymore, that they're shopping online?
Well, things change. They do change. Sometimes, you know. Sometimes you do want to go to the store because you want the holiday music and you want to see you know, Santa, and you want that festivity feeling.
Yes, I would still go to the store to see Santa.
But if I just want to buy something quickly, I'm just going to click, click, click. Ding.
Yeah. If I feel the need to sit on somebody's lap, I'm going to that mall. Jen? No, you're Tracy. Tracy.
Yes.
When I think of Black Friday, I think of people getting in their cars, going to the mall.
Well, I think it's changing.
Well,
did you buy?
I agree.
Friday.
We did see a lot of people, of course, doing that, but just not as many as in years past, and people's habits are changing. While it's easier to buy something online, now it's even easier with our smartphones. It's so easy when you get an email to maybe just click on that email right there. It will take you directly to the site. You can get exactly what you want, and you don't even have to get to your laptop, get to a desktop. It's all right within the palm of your hand. So retailers are cashing in on that, really noticing that people are doing this.
How about that?
Thank you, Tracy. We appreciate it.
We'll see you tomorrow.
And now back over to Lauren Johnson in Robbinsville, New Jersey, inside Amazon's fulfillment center.
Hey, good morning. It's always nice to be in the middle of all the action, because then you're able to get perspective. And from where I have been standing all morning, I have a new respect for the men and women who are working in these Amazon fulfillment centers to get these packages out and on your doorsteps. We are inside one in Robbinsville, New Jersey, built back in 2014, and it's a massive 1 million square feet.
There are over 3,000 full-time associates here picking, packing, and shipping items directly to customers' doorsteps.
Is this one of the busiest days inside this facility?
Yes, so Cyber Monday in 2017 was the single biggest shopping day on Amazon, and we expect this year will be even bigger.
Inside these warehouse walls, it's man and machine helping to crank out millions of packages. Oh, and the first to touch the item after you click buy now at home are robots. Then it's off to a human for visual inspection. It's dropped in a box, it's scanned, labeled, and off to your doorstep. Last year, 83 million items were ordered on Cyber Monday. That's 961 items every second, like bling jewelry.
Amazon, helped me build my brand and my business. I've been with them 10 years. I started in a one-bedroom apartment, and here I am 10 years later. I sell in 11 Amazon countries. I have 40 employees, and life is great.
So the next time you see that package on your doorstep, stop to think about the process that we've showed you this morning, and it might make you a little more grateful to understand the hard work that goes into getting this where you need it to be on time. Reporting from Robbinsville, Lauren Johnson, Fox 29 News.
Thank you, Lauren. This is a live look out in Center City, Philadelphia, out by Love Park. As some of you may know, it's the Christmas Village. It is well underway, so make sure you check out Center City for this lovely holiday. This year is the 21st year of WMMR's Camp Out for Hunger. It's underway. It is the largest single location food drive in the country. Hosts Preston Elliott and Steve Morrison camp out in the parking lot of Xfinity Live in South Philadelphia. It began this morning, and they'll be broadcasting live all week from the site. Their only goal is to get you to come down and donate. Throughout the week, they will be joined by famous guests. They will perform crazy stunts and welcome fellow WMMR DJs to broadcast their shows. On top of that, it is a carnival-like wonderland loaded with rides, games, and entertainment. The only price of admission is a simple donation for Philabundance. Donation hours are Monday through Thursday this week, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and on Friday it is from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. They ask that you please bring only non-perishable food items for Philabundance, and to drop off all your donations, look for the GBCA Demolish Hunger drop-off area. This is a live look this morning. Just want to take you live over to Palm Beach, Florida, where it looks like they're holding some type of press conference. We will have more information, or we'll find out as we tune in.
Can you kind of go over, Vince, people at home, I know we're all streaming, can you kind of go over what is in talking about right here, what kind of testing you did do, what you were hoping to find, what information you were hoping to find, and what information you did get?
Okay, so as you can see in the letter that I passed out to everybody, the Parabon's organization, they do a genealogical test called Snapshot. I have the full report here. You guys have got what's of, I guess, importance to the public. I mean, a lot of this report talks about what the child looked like. Well, we know what the child looked like because we have the child, but what the child would grow to look like and so forth. But none of that is really of any importance to this investigation right now. The most important part of the investigation is the genomic ancestry, meaning that this child was listed as basically 50% Central Asian, 50% African. This is the ancestry. It's a very unusual, according to Parabon, a very unusual split, and most often a person with this 50-50 split would be found in areas like Barbados, Trinidad, or Jamaica, or from those areas originally. Where they could go after born there is anybody's guess. But that's the best that they could come up with, and no known relatives in the database. So we're not hitting any major leads here. We still need you guys. We still need the public, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
And how frustrating is that? Give a cause of death? Did the medical examiner give a cause of death?
They ruled a homicide. I don't want to put any words in their mouth as far as what they've arrived at, because I have not seen the full report. I just spoke to them, and they've okayed the ruling of homicide is what they'd be willing to release today.
Were there bruises or contusions on the baby's body?
No marks. No marks. And the only evidence that we could tell you about is that there is a heel prick in the foot. That information has already gotten out. The umbilical cord had been cut and clipped. Things that would lead us, the medical examiner, to believe this child was born in a hospital or a birthing center, medical facility where they would do, jaundice testing and things after birth like they would normally do. So that much is pretty evident. So some hospital somewhere has evidence of this child being born. We just haven't found it yet.
How frustrating is it to work this case for the past 6 months and not have a lot of tips and not have leads?
Yeah, we're still pushing to, and we're inviting you guys here to see if you could help us. We've got the DNA in the database, and it's going to be continuously run by Parabon. So I'm confident that someday we'll figure out what happened here, but I'm not willing to wait 50 years. I want to see what we could do now. So.
What kind of tips are you hoping for that might split this case wide open?
We need the parents. We need to know who the parents are, and we need to know any relatives that we can start talking to. Maybe there's an explanation, albeit a strange one, but maybe there's an explanation. I'd really like to start there.
Does the reward still stand at $10,000, or will that be increased in your effort to get more tips?
That's Sheriff Bradshaw's amount at this point, and I have not spoken to him to ask if he'd increase it, but it's $10,000 at this time.
You say we know baby June was treated at some point in a hospital that you checked in Palm Beach County, Broward, outside. Have you gone outside the country at all? Have you gone to...
Very difficult to do. We have reached out for the Bahamas in an effort. They have not reported back to us at anything suspicious or any possible leads. Once you leave the country, it's very difficult for us. And so, it's almost be great if we could just get out there and check every baby in the nation. It's just not very easy to do. Hundreds and hundreds of babies. It took countless hours, full-time work.
Can you explain that we did do that in Palm Beach County and in Broward County?
Yeah. As I said earlier, we've checked every baby in the date ranges that we suspect this child was born. Palm Beach, and Broward. It was a multi-agency response, massive undertaking. Something like 700 babies were checked visually, and that included us recruiting from outside agencies because there was a bunch of babies that were born in Broward and moved elsewhere, and then born in Palm Beach and moved to Martin, St. Lucie, or whatever immediately after, and we had to check those too. So that's where we stopped, because at this point, there's no evidence to suggest where else this child could have come from, north, south. The tides have drawn us to Broward County. Maybe further south will be next. I don't know, but that's where we are at this point.
The next question is, we assumed she had floated up from Broward County, or we're thinking maybe she came from further down to Miami or even further down there. Is it speculation?
No, it's not speculation. The Coast Guard, and they did a reverse drift. There's no secret about that for us. And given the weight and the conditions and so forth, depending on how long the child was in the water, and it's very difficult to say exact, this child could have come from anywhere from Boca, from onto Pompano, depending on how long the child was in the water. And, if we misestimated the amount of time the child was in the water, it could have come from a little further south. But still, we're not in Miami yet. It's just a tough call. I mean, and for us to go down to Miami, that's a huge undertaking. We're looking at like 400 babies that have to be checked down there alone. And so that may end up being next, but I'm not sure yet.
The information we have, all we can do is count on our professional partners to assist us with that. And what we know today is that we have the genealogy report that says what the child is, and that the medical examiner's office has ruled it a homicide. So with that information, hopefully you guys can keep this alive for us and get us more tips along with that reward. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it, guys, and I really appreciate you guys' help with this, and the public's assistance is very needed here.
And any tip helps. I mean, that's what
Yes.
people, can you stress that a little bit more?
Any information, even if you think it's not that important or if it's not critical, anything you might have heard, saw, please roll in the tips. We have 2 lines that you can call. We have the Crime Stoppers tip line, 1-800-458-TIPS, or they can call direct 688-4155. That's area code 561-688-4155. That's our direct tip lines to SVU here at the Sheriff's Office. So.
Just to stress that people can remain anonymous too. I mean, if there's a woman that was pregnant that had a baby, family members know, friends know that. We can stress that they can remain anonymous. Just come forward and help us bring closure.
How difficult is it to work at such a heartbreaking case like this, day in and day out for the past 6 months?
Well, we hate seeing this, and we want to get to the bottom of what happened. And yeah, it's terrible. And we don't have a good explanation for what happened or why it happened, and that's the most frustrating part. So we want to bring closure to this case, and we want to let the public know that we're not going to stop here. It's going to continue, and this case is not going to close until we get completion here. Thank you, guys.
And just a little background on that. There could be new revelations in the search for parents for baby June. It was a dead newborn found floating near the Boynton Beach Inlet earlier this year. An off-duty firefighter discovered the girl's body in June. Investigators say the baby girl was between 4 to 7 days old and was floating in the ocean for 6 to 18 hours before being discovered. It's not yet clear as to how the baby ended up in the water. Since then, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office combed the area hospitals from Martin County to Broward County. Investigators offered a $10,000 reward. They followed tips, but so far no signs of the parents. So that was a live press conference down at West Palm Beach, Florida.
we're giving up too many.
And we just received word that the Philadelphia Flyers have relieved Ron Hextall as its executive vice president and general manager. The organization announced it this morning. They said, "We thank Ron for his many significant contributions, but it has become clear that we no longer share the same philosophical approach concerning the direction of the team." Flyers president Paul Holmgren said that in a statement. In light of these differences, we feel it's the organization's best interest to make a change effective immediately. I have already begun the process to identify and select our next general manager, which we hope to complete as soon as possible. No further information, they said, will be released at this time. Well, it was a violent weekend at the U.S.-Mexico border. Doug Luzader in Washington spoke with Fox 29 Good Day with more on the impact that may have on the immigration debate.
Images that were shared all over, certainly video and around this world and in all the newspapers of all that happening. Let's get down to Washington, D.C. and Doug Luzader. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, and the president's been tweeting about this already this morning, saying that he is willing to close the U.S.-Mexico border permanently if Mexico doesn't do more to deal with these caravans. It was mayhem along the border. So many migrants making a run for it that U.S. agents at one point appeared to deploy tear gas. Some migrants responded by throwing rocks. The U.S. had closed the nearby border crossing in anticipation of the rush. And from the Department of Homeland Security, this message: DHS will not tolerate this type of lawlessness and will not hesitate to shut down ports of entry for security and public safety reasons. As the first family returned to the White House last night from their Thanksgiving holiday in Florida, the president ignored shouted questions about the border, but he has called on Mexico to do more to address the problem. In this brief lame duck session of Congress, the recent violence is sure to reignite the immigration debate, with Democrats pushing to address the violence and economic problems in Central America that are driving the massive caravans north.
I think most people understand that if you've got a problem, probably the smart way to solve the problem is to go to the root cause of that problem.
And some Republicans are skeptical of the asylum claims that so many of these migrants are expected to make.
Basically, the word got out that this was a rubber stamp. You could come to America in a caravan or in large groups, and we would just allow you in, whether you had a credible fear and needed asylum or not. Those days are over.
And as far as this talk about a border wall and the funding of it, you know, we have a government funding deadline coming up in about a week and a half, and this could potentially lead to a partial government shutdown if the president really decides to push this. Back to you guys.
All right, we shall see. Thanks, Doug. 7:13 now.
Well, Alec Baldwin was in a New York City courtroom this morning for an arraignment related to assault and harassment charges earlier this month. The actor was accused of hitting a man in the face over a parking spot. He's reportedly facing misdemeanor charges over the incident. Baldwin denies the accusations. This was a live look this morning of Baldwin's exit from the courtroom. The weather authority is calling today Flood Watch Monday. Philadelphia is slated for a soggy Monday to kick off the week, with southeastern Pennsylvania at large poised to experience flooding as storms move through the area. The National Weather Service has issued a flood watch for counties around Philadelphia lasting until Monday night. Parts of the area already received 3 to 4 inches of rain Saturday night into Sunday, and creeks, streams, and rivers were running high. The conditions are expected to worsen due to additional rain forecasted to move through the area today. Parts of the Lehigh Valley were put under a hazardous weather outlook lasting through Sunday evening. You can download the Fox 29 Weather Authority app to keep up with the latest forecast. Well, we have just received word that General Motors announced a restructuring plan that will affect thousands of workers in both the United States and Canada. General Motors will lay off 14,700 factory and white-collar workers in North America and put 5 plants up for possible closure. The company said this is part of a plan that restructures to cut costs and focus on more autonomous and electric vehicles. This is a live look at Fox 29's Sky Fox, who was on the way to a triple shooting at the 2800 block of North Water Street in the Kensington section of the city. Police report that one 40-year-old male victim was shot 1 time in the upper left calf. The male was transported to Temple University Hospital by police and placed in critical condition. A second victim, 37-year-old, shot once in each leg. He was transported to the same hospital by private vehicle and placed in critical condition as well. A third male, a John Doe, we don't know the age. He was shot 1 time in the chest and 2 times in the left arm. He was transported as well to Temple University Hospital by police and placed in critical condition. The scene is being held at this time and there are no arrests made. Here's a live look, and all this information comes from our Philadelphia police. Well, here's a live look from the arraignment of former president of Michigan State University for lying to police in Larry Nassar case.
The prosecutor is required to present proofs to show there's probable cause to believe the crimes you're charged with were actually committed and you're the person who committed the crimes. At the end of that hearing, if the proofs are strong enough, the matter would be bound over to circuit court for arraignment and trial. If not strong enough, the case could be dismissed. So I'm going to schedule this for a probable cause conference. It's supposed to be within 7 to 14 days. Do you want this next Monday or the following Monday? Or have you talked about hearing dates?
Our choices, Your Honor, either December 3 or December 10.
That's when I normally do them. Are those options, are they appropriate?
Mike, is December 3?
I usually do them about 1:30, but we could do this a little later, so because we don't need to sit around and wait for it.
Your Honor, would it be possible to do the conference on either December 12 or 13? I know it's not a Monday, but there's scheduling conflicts that Mr. Morgenroth and I have.
Are those Wednesday and Thursday?
Yes, Wednesday or Thursday. Is that possible?
Yeah, Wednesdays I have treatment court review hearings. Thursday,
Michigan State University's former president this is her arraignment today on charges alleging that she lied to police during the investigation into longtime MSU sports doctor Larry Nassar, who received lengthy prison terms for sexually abusing gymnasts and possessing child pornography. Lou Anna Simon is among several people who have been charged, fired, or forced from their jobs as a result of the investigators into Nassar, a once renowned doctor who worked for Michigan State and Indiana-based USA Gymnastics, which trains Olympians. Nassar was sentenced to decades in prison after hundreds of girls and women said he sexually abused them under the guise of medical treatment.
If you just need a few minutes of time of mine.
I think that's all we'll need.
Okay. So was that, did we end up with the 17th or the 18th?
18th.
That's fine. What time?
Simon, shown here, is the university president and school alumna who resigned in January amid growing pressure from students, lawmakers, and some members of the school's governing board. She acknowledged being the focus of this anger, but has denied any cover-up by the university. The governing board later hired former Michigan Governor John Engler as its interim president. The school has already settled lawsuits totaling $500 million.
Okay. Preliminary exam to be scheduled on December 18th when we're all together. And now to the issue of bond. I need to consider the seriousness of the offense charged, protection of the public, your criminal record, and the likelihood you'll return for your court hearings. So, did anyone want to be heard on bond, Mr. Teeter?
Yes, Your Honor. When the charges were issued last week, as the court has indicated, there are 2 felonies, 2 high court misdemeanors. We did make contact with the defendant's counsel. She voluntarily surrendered herself today. We believe that pursuant to the court rule 6.106, parent C, she does qualify for personal incompetence bond. We would ask that normal and standard conditions apply. That would be that she appear as required, that she not leave the state without the court's permission, obviously not commit any crimes while she's on bond, but also that she surrender her passport to the court and be held to the conclusion of the case. In addition to that, we'd ask that as she leaves today, that she go through her normal booking process, which would be fingerprinting booking photos, but then also doing everything.
And would one of you like to be heard?
Your Honor, release on personal recognizance is appropriate. I'm happy to go through all of the reasons why, if Your Honor would like, but in light of the Attorney General's statement that release on personal recognizance is appropriate under the court rule, I don't want to waste the court's time if the court is already inclined to release Dr. Simon on her own personal recognizance.
She has no criminal record?
None. No criminal record, Your Honor.
A $5,000 personal recognizance bond with conditions, which are just the standard ones, plus surrendering the passport to the court.
Okay.
Anything else?
Your Honor, just the order for the DNA, I think that's a separate order.
Yeah, I've signed the DNA and the fingerprint orders are in the file.
Nothing further.
Okay. Any questions?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Recess.
And now let us jump over live to the UN Security Council meeting on Russia and Ukraine.
Integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders in accordance with relevant General Assembly and Security Council resolutions. Regrettably, yesterday's incident only threatens to cause the situation in and around Ukraine to deteriorate further. We strongly urge both the Russian Federation and Ukraine to refrain from any ratcheting up of actions or rhetoric and remind both of the need to contain this incident so as to prevent a serious escalation that may have unforeseen consequences. At this juncture, the immediate de-escalation of tensions in the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea is required. It is critical that earnest attempts are made to find a peaceful settlement to the situation based on the diplomatic and legal means available and in accordance with the UN Charter. Thank you, Mr. President.
我感谢迪卡洛女士的所做的通报。我现在请想要发言的安理会成员发言。我现在请美国代表发言。
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning I spoke with President Trump and Secretary Pompeo, and my statement reflects the concerns at the highest level of the American government. For the past 4 years, the international community has spoken with a strong, clear, and largely united voice denouncing Russia's aggression against Ukraine. The United States, the European Union, and its member states, and many other countries have imposed sanctions against Russia for its unacceptable conduct in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. Sunday's outrageous violation of sovereign Ukrainian territory is part of a pattern of Russian behavior that includes the purported annexation of Crimea and abuses against countless Ukrainians in Crimea, as well as stoking conflict that has taken the lives of more than 10,000 people in eastern Ukraine. And it shows no sign of decreasing. What we witnessed this weekend is yet another reckless Russian escalation. Let's be clear about what is known. Ukrainian ships set sail from one Ukrainian port to another Ukrainian port. They attempted to do so by the only possible way to go, through the Kerch Strait. Both Russia and Ukraine used the strait routinely. But this time, Russia decided to prevent passage of the Ukrainian ships, rammed them, and then opened fire on them. This is no way for a law-abiding, civilized nation to act. Impeding Ukraine's lawful transit through the Kerch Strait is a violation under international law. It is an arrogant act that the international community must condemn and will never accept. In May, the United States condemned Russia's construction and opening of the Kerch Strait Bridge between Russia and occupied Crimea. In August, the United States condemned Russia's harassment of international shipping in the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait. The United States will continue to stand with the people of Ukraine against the Russian aggression. It is our expectation that our European partners will lead this effort through the Normandy 4 format, which we support. We call on Russia to respect its international obligations and not obstruct or harass Ukraine's transit in the Kerch Strait, and to de-escalate the tensions it has created. As President Trump said many times, the United States would welcome a normal relationship with Russia. But outlaw actions like this one continue to make that impossible. The United States will maintain its Crimea-related sanctions against Russia. Further Russian escalation of this kind will only make matters worse. It will further undermine Russia's standing in the world. It will further sour Russia's relations with the U.S. and many other countries. It will further increase tensions with Ukraine. In the name of international peace and security, Russia must immediately cease its unlawful conduct and respect the navigational rights and freedoms of all states. Thank you.
I
thank the representative of the U.S. for her statement. And now give the floor to the representative of the UK.
Thank you, Mr. President. And may I just start by saying that I was disappointed by the Russian representative's explanation of vote in the previous round. As he himself stated, he did not actually make an explanation of vote, but a substantive statement. And in so doing, Russia showed contempt for the Security Council and its members by not accepting a procedural vote by this Council. Russia has regularly discussed Ukraine here under a different agenda item. In this instant, Russia deliberately chose a provocative title for the meeting, which they knew they would lose. I asked myself why, and I assume that Russia knows how weak its position of substance is, and so hoped to turn attention on process and play victim. Well, it will not work, Mr. President, because yesterday, by Moscow's own admission, Russian vessels opened fire on and seized 3 Ukrainian vessels approaching the Sea of Azov. We are deeply concerned about the 6 injured Ukrainians and 23 Ukrainians who have been detained by the Russian Federation, and we call for their immediate release. Mr. President, we condemn Russia's deplorable use of military force. This further demonstrates Russia's ongoing contempt for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and its contempt for the global rules-based international system which this organization serves to uphold. It follows on from Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its construction of Kerch Bridge in May this year, which constitutes a further violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Yesterday's action follows months of Russian harassment of international shipping in the Sea of Azov, presumably aimed at destabilizing the Ukrainian economy. Russia's actions are not in conformity with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and the 2003 Russia-Ukraine bilateral agreement, which provides for freedom of passage for each state's vessels in the Sea of Azov, including military ships. Russia's actions must stop immediately. International shipping must be allowed free passage in the Sea of Azov. All parties must exercise restraint. Mr. President, we have seen this game before. Russia wants to consolidate its illegal annexation of Crimea and annex the Sea of Azov. Russia seems to hope that the international community will simply acquiesce and accept this as a new reality. Well, we will not. The United Kingdom's position is clear. We do not and will not recognise the illegal annexation of the Crimean Peninsula by Russia. The General Assembly made its position clear in its resolution of the 27th of March 2014, and we continue to fully support Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognised borders and territorial waters. This is why on the 31st of July, the European Union sanctioned 6 new entities in connection with Russia opening the Kerch Bridge. We continue to work closely with international partners to ensure that sanctions remain in place as long as Russia's control of the peninsula continues. Russia's illegal annexation constitutes a deliberate violation of a number of international agreements and commitments, including Article 2 of the United Nations Charter, the Helsinki Final Act, the Budapest Memorandum, and the 1997 Russia-Ukraine Treaty of Friendship. But this is just the start. Russia's actions are also causing human suffering. Appalling human rights abuses in the Crimean Peninsula continue, with the widespread persecution of minority groups such as the Crimean Tatars. The Crimean Tatars face regular harassment and risk arrest, detentions, and threats to seize their property. They have had their rights of worship, assembly, and expression restricted. The Crimean Tatars are not the only people suffering at the hands of Russia. Anyone who expresses even mild discontent or voices their opposition to this illegal annexation risks being charged with extremism and given a lengthy prison sentence, forcing many into exile. Russia continues to ignore calls by the General Assembly for the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit Crimea. Mr. President, we remain clear in our support of the rules-based international system, which Russia continues to flout. Russia must not be allowed to rewrite history by establishing new realities on the ground. But this is sadly not the first time Russia has indulged in such reckless and provocative acts this year. Russia was responsible for a chemical weapons attack on British soil, and its agents were caught red-handed in The Hague. Russia has steadily increased tension in the Sea of Azov, and has now, by its own admission, fired on Ukrainian ships, injuring sailors on board. These are not the actions of a responsible country dedicated to the maintenance of international peace and security and to upholding the United Nations Charter. As my Prime Minister recently made clear, like others here today, we remain open to a different relationship with Russia, one where Russia desists from these attacks that undermine international treaties and international security, and desists from actions which undermine the territorial integrity of its neighbours, and instead acts together with the international community to fulfil the common responsibilities we share as permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. And we hope that the Russian state chooses to take this path. However, Russia's actions over the weekend do not give much ground for hope. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the UK for his statement. Now give the floor to the representative of France.
Monsieur le Président, compte tenu de l'engagement des autorités françaises et allemandes dans la résolution de la crise en Ukraine dans le cadre du format Normandie, cette intervention est prononcée au nom de la France et de l'Allemagne. Monsieur le Président, les incidents maritimes survenus hier sont graves et suscitent notre profonde préoccupation. Comme nous venons de l'entendre, le détroit de Kerch, la mer Noire et la mer d'Azov ont été hier le théâtre de violentes manœuvres qui ont accru
escalation of violence. Once again, this underscores the instability of this region.
Ont déclaré avoir percuté, puis arraisonné, en faisant usage de la force, 3 navires de guerre ukrainiens qui entreprenaient de franchir cette voie maritime. 6 marins ukrainiens ont été blessés. Rien, à notre connaissance, ne justifie cet usage de la force. Comme l'ont indiqué ce matin les autorités, ainsi que les représentants permanents des membres européens de ce Conseil, en
European members of this Council on Mission in Beijing, we'd like to express our serious concern regarding the actions of the last 24 hours. We urge the parties to great restraint. France and Germany calls on Russia in particular to respect and restore freedom of passage in line with the international law of the sea in the Kerch Strait, as well as access to the Sea of Azov, which is currently temporarily blocked. And we would urge for action to be taken to de-escalate the tensions immediately. We would also urge Russia to release as soon as possible those Ukrainian sailors who were detained and to restore the seized vessels. I would like to assure Ukraine of our solidarity and firmly reaffirm France and Germany's commitment for the full sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine in its internationally recognized borders. The incident yesterday are the direct consequence of Crimea's annexation in March 2014 by Russia in violation of international law. We condemned the construction of the Kerch bridge by Russia. This contributes to deprive Ukraine of full access to its maritime areas in the Sea of Azov. Sir, the serious accidents of yesterday also underscore the need to find a lasting solution to the situation in the entire east of Ukraine. France and Germany will continue to rally, as they have done for some 4 years now, to de-escalate the situation in the east of Ukraine and to promote a long-term solution to the crisis through the Normandy format. Let us be clear. All parties, in particular Russia, must respect the commitments that they themselves have taken. The full implementation of the Minsk agreement that both Russia and Ukraine have committed to remain the only way to find a peaceful and lasting solution to this conflict, which has lasted for some 5 years now. Mr. President, France and Germany will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian people, so long suffering in the recent years of conflict in Donbass and the illegal annexation of Crimea. You can be assured that we will continue our efforts along these lines in the Normandy format and in all the appropriate bodies. Thank you very much.
Thanks, the representative of France, for the statement. Now give the floor to the representative of Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me echo the UK delegation by stressing that it is our understanding that the delivery by the Russian delegation of a de facto full, substantial statement, once its request was rejected, did run against both the procedure and the practice of this Council. Mr. President, we have gathered today to discuss an additional demonstration of disregard for international law and undermining efforts to achieve peace in Eastern Europe. Russia has just added another dimension to the conflict in Ukraine. During the last Security Council briefing on Ukraine, we expressed our concern about the development of military capabilities that takes place in the Crimea and the Sea of Azov. For several months, Russia has delayed hundreds of commercial vessels attempting to reach Ukrainian ports in the Sea of Azov via the Kerch Strait for extended periods and at great economic cost for Ukraine. Now, Russia attacks Ukrainian vessels, stating the need for protection of, quote, Russian territory, unquote. Further militarization and increase of tensions brings more instability to a region that suffered enough. Mr. President, after the aggression against Georgia, the illegal occupation of Crimea, fueling the conflict in the Donbass, building the Kerch Bridge without the consent of the authorities in Kiev, farcical elections in the separatist regions in November 2011, Russia violated Ukraine's navigation rights. We strongly condemn Russia's aggressive actions. We call on its authorities to respect international law and to both sides to exercise restraint in the current situation, which may further jeopardize the stability of European security. This state-to-state conflict, initiated and fueled by Russia, has one aim: to destabilize Ukraine. Therefore, we urge the whole UN system to give a proper attention to this active armed conflict. We cannot turn a blind eye to this situation only because one of the permanent members of the Security Council is a side in this conflict. Russia's military actions in the Crimea and the Sea of Azov should serve as lessons learned on what this state is able to do in order to safeguard its critical infrastructure in Europe. Persistent violations of international law, including bilateral agreements, lead directly to imposing forced solutions aimed at controlling Russia's interests concerning the existing, being built, and planned communication and energy infrastructure. Mr. President, let me reiterate that Poland strongly supports the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. We do not recognize Russia's annexation of Crimea. We do underline the need for the full implementation of the Minsk agreements, the only way to a lasting solution to the conflict in and around Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Poland for his statement. Now give the floor to the representative of Sweden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sweden is deeply concerned about the escalation in the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait. Blocking maritime traffic to and from Ukrainian ports using military force is a serious violation of international law. This violation comes against the backdrop of the illegal annexation of Crimea and Sevastopol in 2014 and the finalization of the bridge across the Kerch Strait earlier this year, both blatant violations of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We fully support the Ukrainian request for a council meeting in light of the latest developments. Any other country would have done the same and would have expected the issue to be handled as the threat to international peace and security that it constitutes. Russia's unwarranted and disproportionate checks of ships passing through the strait has been ongoing for months already. We regret that Russia has ignored the calls from Ukraine and the international community to abide by international law and allow free passage through the Kerch Strait, and instead has opted to escalate the situation further. In a situation which is already tense, this behavior is deeply irresponsible. As a first step, the naval vessels and crew members which have been detained should be immediately and unconditionally released. This would be an important step towards de-escalation. We urge Russia to act in accordance with international law. Let me underline, there can be no doubt that Russia has international legal obligations to refrain from blocking the access to Ukrainian ports in the Azov Sea and elsewhere, as well as to respect OSCE principles and commitments. We call on Russia to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and its navigational rights. I thank you.
Thank the representative of Sweden for his statement. Now give the floor to the representative of Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Ma délégation salue l'organisation
de
cette réunion d'urgence du Conseil de sécurité. Au regard de la gravité des incidents qui se sont produits le dimanche 25 novembre 2018 entre forces navales russes et les navires ukrainiens dans le détroit de Kerch. Elle remercie Madame Rosemary DiCarlo, secrétaire générale adjointe aux affaires politiques, pour son exposé. Dans une région déjà éprouvée par un conflit qui, selon les observateurs, a fait environ 10 000 morts depuis son déclenchement en 2014, ce regain de tension pourrait aggraver davantage les risques d'une nouvelle confrontation militaire
with disastrous humanitarian consequences. My country regrets this incident. Like the other incidents over recent months, this one helps to maintain a climate of mistrust between the Russian and Ukrainian parties and helps to undermine the peace efforts made by the international community to bring peace and stability in the region. Mr. President, my country would like to take this opportunity provided for by this meeting to urge the Russian and Ukrainian parties to demonstrate restraint in order to avoid a military escalation in the region. My delegation urges them to refrain from any actions that could lead to a new conflict that is larger in scale. My delegation deplores the lack of progress in implementing the Normandy format and Minsk agreements, and it urges the Russian and Ukrainian parties to promote a peaceful settlement to the difference that opposes them. To this end, it expresses its support for the OSCE observer mission and for the Joint Center for Control and Coordination. We support their efforts to de-escalate the conflict. Furthermore, my delegation urges the Joint Center for Control and Coordination to play a supporting role for observers from the OSCE and to monitor the ceasefire agreements, in order to ensure the effective implementation of the Minsk agreements. So, in conclusion, I would like to reiterate Côte d'Ivoire's support for all efforts underway to find a negotiated political solution to the crisis in Ukraine. My country would urge all the protagonists to respect their commitments to ensure an effective implementation of the Minsk agreements and Resolution 2202 of the Security Council. Thank you very much.
Thank the representative of Côte d'Ivoire for the statement. Now give the floor to the representative of Kazakhstan.
I thank the Chinese presidency for convening today's emergency meeting on the latest developments in the Azov Sea. Kazakhstan, as a member of the Council, is open to dialogue and is ready to debate over international security issues in transparent discussions for the cause of preventing international conflicts. Taking this into account, as well as the need to consider the matter within the framework of the Security Council, our delegation was ready to vote in favor of both requests, of Ukraine and of Russia. Kazakhstan considers both people of Ukraine and Russia as brotherly nations to our country, sharing common history throughout the past. In this regard, we urge both parties to refrain from steps leading to any further escalation of bilateral relations. It is of special importance for our state that Ukraine remains sovereign, stable, and independent. Kazakhstan is ready to assist to both nations, Russian Federation and Ukraine, to overcome crisis in their relations. Kazakhstan adheres to a balanced approach of solving the Ukrainian crisis through peaceful negotiations and a mediation process based on key principles and norms of international law and the United Nations Charter. My country has taken and continues to take part in multilateral consultations in seeking a settlement of this issue. We are determined to work closely with all members of the Council without political expediency and in an open, objective, responsible, and constructive way. It should be noted that in the past, our country made its contribution to the launch of the Normandy format and eventual conclusion of the Minsk agreements. Kazakhstan has as well repeatedly expressed its readiness to render its all-round assistance in the process, supporting a peaceful settlement in the southeast of Ukraine and fostering robust relations between Ukraine and Russia. In this way, our delegation is concerned that the negotiation process to resolve the Ukrainian conflict has actually been suspended during the past months. This is evidenced by the lack of contacts in the Normandy format at a higher level. Such suspension has a full potential for sparks of new negative developments in the region. To this end, it is with regret that we recognize the incident between the Russian Federation and Ukrainian Navy vessels in the Kerch Strait that took place yesterday on 25th of November. Kazakhstan urged both sides to act with utmost restraint to de-escalate the situation between two states. We consider this as the only viable existing mechanism in a peaceful way by restraining from any kind of negative actions. Such an incident can drastically raise the chances for an unintended spark to set the region on fire. Both governments must urgently step in and try to negotiate a deal to de-escalate the situation with possible assistance from the international community. We believe that sustainable peace and full-fledged normalization of relations between both countries can also be achieved through establishing CBMs in the security and economic dimensions as well. We should not allow further escalation of tensions, which could lead to active warfare in this new area. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Kazakhstan. Now give the floor to the representative of plurinational state of Bolivia.
Thank you, President. We're grateful to Ms. DiCarlo, U.S. Chief of Political Affairs, for her briefing, and we would like to express our concern about the events that unfolded yesterday in the Azov Sea. We reiterate that the military option cannot from any standpoint be viewed as a solution to any dispute. We therefore call on the parties to build the suitable conditions to avoid an escalation in tensions, to refrain from any action which could stoke violence, to uphold the purposes and principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter, and to respect international law and international maritime law, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. To this end, we call upon the parties to work to find a peaceful solution through dialogue, bearing in mind the range of measures for the implementation of the Minsk agreements, so as to achieve a balance of interests without overlooking the principles of preventive diplomacy and good offices geared towards a negotiated political solution. We stress that both the international community and this Council must undertake all the necessary efforts to ensure the upholding of international peace and security. In the long term, this will be beneficial for the region, given that it is the parties themselves who must overcome their differences. Finally, we call on the leaders of both parties to overcome the divisions of the past, to prioritize peace for the benefit of their peoples, and we urge the international community to focus on the concerns of all parties with a neutral and equitable approach to achieve lasting stability. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Bolivia for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Peru.
Thank you, President.
Okay, that is all we're going to have for today on Fox 29 News Now. You can catch the rest of the stream on foxnews.com if you search UN Security Council. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter for all the latest and breaking news, and catch our broadcasts at 5, 6, 10, and 11 tonight.
We regret the recent escalation and greater tensions between the countries. In line with the UN Charter, Peru